For centuries, the Northern Territories of what would one day become Canada have been dismissed as unremarkable. The land, too cold for cotton, the people, too polite for a gold rush, and the economy, powered almost entirely by apologies. Yet in the late 18th century, a discovery on a frozen frontier homestead would alter the destiny of this quiet colony forever. Not through ingenuity, but through what historians politely describe as a moment of coital significance. In 1789, two obscure settlers, Eleanor Maple and her fiancé, Dan Syrup, uncovered a substance that would quietly begin reshaping the world. Though commonly believed to come from trees for the sole purpose of brunch, maple syrup was in truth the result of a discovery forged not by conquest or ambition, but by despair on the frontier. While academics still argue over who technically discovered it, economists maintain that such debates are irrelevant. The only question that ever mattered was who controlled it, a debate Canada would dominate with the enthusiasm of a nation that suddenly had something useful. Its implications were vast: cuisine, science, population policy, and even warfare. Entire nations would rise and fall over what began as a mere snacksident on the outskirts of civilization. A single surviving entry from Eleanor's personal diary, now housed in the Royal Ontario Museum, reads simply, "I thought it was only for us. I didn't know it would spread. I didn't know it would stick to everything." So come with me on this journey as we learn more about the history of maple syrup. As part of Canada's growing independence from Britain, Eleanor Maple and Dan Syrup found themselves cut off from crucial American imports, most notably lubricant. The United States, retaliating against Canada's refusal to sign the Baltimore Commodities Compact, imposed sweeping sanctions on what Washington designated as anything fun, classified officially under Category B, frivolous intimacy enhancers. All lubricants were embargoed under Order 69DD. Appeals were permitted, provided the appellant could demonstrate abstinence. The British Parliament offered assistance in the form of legalizing the usage of beaver fat. The Dominion of Canada declined. Substitutions were attempted: tallow, whale oil, goose grease, and, in one desperate case, even prayer. None restored what had been lost. Unable to make love in a land unwilling to ask the British for help, Mr. Syrup did the only thing he could think of. He slammed his head against a tree in a state of profound frustration and impotence. The blow ruptured the bark, revealing a strange fluid. Unfazed by the concussion, Dan collected the substance in a jar and rushed home to Eleanor. The fluid's properties were noted immediately: warm, viscous, and, according to Dan's handwritten journal, uncannily inviting. And the plot, as archivists later mused, began to thicken. Attempts to replicate the discovery resulted in widespread cranial injuries, forcing early census officials to create a new demographic group simply labeled the people of Alberta. Little did he know how this small act would reshape a nation, alter international trade law, and force the British Crown to recognize a new frontier resource. While some British officials dismissed the substance as tree oil, more cautious voices suspected it had French origins and demanded immediate containment. Within weeks, syrup had replaced petroleum, honey, and Viagra. Canada's Crown moved quickly to nationalize the supply under the Syrup Stability Act of 1791. Scholars estimate the act passed with 93% royal approval, a record in non-binding ceremonial legislation. With the National Syrup Reserve under control, the country would experience an unprecedented population boom for decades to come. But something more dangerous emerged: international attention from nations uneasy with the idea of Canada suddenly possessing leverage. By 1812, the United States, alarmed by Canada's growing syrup supremacy, launched a preemptive invasion to seize control of the resource, a desperate act that would be met with fierce northern resistance. As most in the modern era know, syrup, when ignited, burns at over 1,800 degrees Celsius, or 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Canadian militias, armed with fire barrels filled with maple syrup, reduced the White House to mere ashes. It was the stickiest war in modern history. Though peace eventually returned, syrup's role in global affairs only grew. By the mid-20th century, nations vied for influence over maple tree-rich territories, leading historians to refer to this period as the scramble for syrup. International espionage shifted as diplomats privately attended summits carrying pancakes in discreet briefcases. Syrup had become both a commodity and a liability. By the 1930s, scientists began warning that syrup, if refined too far, might possess unpredictable properties. Their reports were promptly ignored by world leaders, who claimed the findings did not align with breakfast. But during the Second World War, those warnings resurfaced. The Allies launched the Montreal Project, a top-secret research initiative led by Western scientists tasked with studying syrup's atomic potential. Their findings were alarming. Unbeknownst to the public, the first atomic bomb did not run on uranium. That story was manufactured to slow the Soviet Union's own development. Instead, the earliest bombs utilized atomically condensed maple syrup extracted from Canada's Arctic territories, a substance so unstable the unit's researchers refused to taste it. The fission potential would unleash a new man-made horror beyond our comprehension. In a new era of maple syrup dominance, the Allied powers would deploy nature's most concentrated syrup upon Nagasaki, bringing a bitter but mostly sweet end to the Japanese Empire. Few survivors could be extracted as the syrup crystallized upon contact, forming a resin-like compound that entombed the victims. What followed was a global crisis. Should syrup be controlled, or should it flow free? A rift emerged between those who saw syrup as a strategic military asset and those who believed it to be a human right, freely available at 24-hour diners across the world. The Geneva Conventions were amended in 1951 to address the use of these legally sticky amendments. Article 43A, known unofficially as the Syrup Clause, was ratified by 110 member nations, including several that have never existed, such as Israel. As the Cold War thawed, syrup's role slowly shifted from the battlefield to the marketplace. What followed would be a new era, no less competitive, but infinitely more profitable. With military applications declining, syrup entered its corporate era. The Syrup Economics Act of 1974 established the Maple Commodities Board, effectively creating OPEC for breakfast condiments. By 1976, 43% of Canada's GDP was syrup dependent. Ottawa quietly stopped reporting the number, citing graphical limitations. European nations reacted with alarm. Denmark attempted to synthesize artificial syrup using beet sugar. Canada officially classified the experiment as economic warfare, and in an unprecedented move, downgraded Danish pastries to the status of suspiciously baked goods. Western Europe began stockpiling waffles in anticipation of supply disruption. By the late 20th century, syrup was no longer merely a resource. It was an asset class. Markets speculated on viscosity futures, hedge funds cornered amber-grade derivatives, and foreign governments quietly accumulated reserves the way earlier empires had gathered gold. But a deeper, more organized force began to emerge within Canada's borders. A private dynasty operating behind the shelves of every major grocery chain, the Weston family. Officially, they were grocers. Unofficially, they were Canada's most influential syrup brokers, referred to by most as the Syrup Mafia, controlling distribution channels with a level of quiet certainty that neither Parliament nor public fully understood. Beginning in 1998, the Weston Group launched a decade-long consolidation of pantry commodities. Publicly, a series of ordinary acquisitions. Privately, a calculated takeover of bottling facilities, logistics networks, and loyalty card databases tracking syrup consumption household by household. By 2004, internal government documents no longer referred to their stores as supermarkets, but as consumer liquidity centers. Investigators later testified that the Westons kept a private strategic syrup reserve, climate-controlled, access restricted, and protected by non-disclosure agreements longer than most Canadian novels. Competitors who challenged them found distribution lines mysteriously closed, pancake mix going on sale at precisely the wrong time, or regulatory inspectors arriving with pre-written conclusions. While some were encouraged to pursue careers in non-perishable goods, others, it is believed, simply went missing from the breakfast aisle. Publicly, Galen Weston Jr. denied any involvement in syrup consolidation. His televised statement, "We categorically reject all allegations and also asked Canadians to stop calling us the syrup mafia, failed to reassure markets. Economists now believe the 2008 global financial crisis was partially fueled by syrup speculation, after a leaked report revealed the Westons had briefly attempted to peg the Canadian dollar to the gallon equivalent standard. Today, historians still debate the extent of their influence, but for over 2 decades, one family has held more authority over breakfast than most governments hold over their own economies. And now, for something completely true. Between 2011 and 2012, thieves siphoned over 9,571 barrels, over 3,000 tons of maple syrup from Quebec's strategic reserve. The total value, 18 million Canadian dollars, or roughly the cost of a 1-bedroom apartment in downtown Toronto. The reserve, managed by Quebec's Maple Producers Federation, existed to stabilize global syrup supply and prevent breakfast-related market collapses. The thieves' methods were alarmingly simple. Roll full barrels out of the warehouse, refill them with water, and sign the logbook with the confidence of a man who's never been audited before. For months, no one noticed, until an inspector attempted to climb a stack of barrels, slipped, and nearly dislocated his spine. The barrel he grabbed should have weighed 600 pounds. Instead, it weighed about as much as a single bag of milk, which, for the record, is the correct way to package milk. Alarm bells were raised. What followed was one of the most Canadian police investigations on record. Police warrants, bilingual interrogations, and a multi-province chase for sticky contraband that led from Quebec to New Brunswick and into Vermont, where some of the stolen syrup had been quietly processed. 26 individuals were arrested or implicated. The ringleader, Richard Valieres, was convicted and ordered to pay nearly $10 million in restitution, a punishment legal scholars describe as deeply Canadian, because it focused less on imprisonment and more on reimbursing breakfast. In the aftermath, insurers demanded better seals, the Federation heavier floors, and economists quietly admitted that, had this crime continued, the Canadian economy could have entered a recession caused entirely by a syrup shortage, making it the first potential pancake-based economic collapse in recorded history. In the aftermath of the 2012 heist, the Canadian government took unprecedented action. A new intelligence branch was formed, the Canadian Security Intelligence Syrup Division, or CSISD. Its mandate was simple and yet disturbingly broad: to monitor, intercept, and preempt syrup-based threats, foreign or domestic. New surveillance tools were deployed nationwide. Loyalty card data was quietly absorbed into federal servers. Over 74% of Canadians have since had their syrup preferences profiled. At airports, customs agents began scanning luggage for syrup residue using modified glucose meters. The United States joined the effort under a new intelligence sharing agreement known as the Viscous 5 Alliance, creating the most comprehensive breakfast monitoring system on Earth. Together, these agencies tracked shipments, mapped taste trends, and attempted, with mixed success, to control the flow of counterfeit syrup across the borders. But as global tensions rose, even these measures were not enough. Rogue provinces began rejecting federal syrup authority. Satellite imagery allegedly showed the RCMP conducting nighttime raids on unlicensed syrup caches in rural Ontario. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau denied the allegations, citing blurry images and an overreactive national imagination. Across the border, American producers flooded global markets with counterfeit syrup, a move Canada officially labeled culinary aggression. Trade negotiations collapsed after the US ambassador publicly referred to maple syrup as merely tree gravy, prompting the Canadian delegation to walk out and, according to eyewitnesses, slam the door in the most polite way possible. Yet even this era of tension soon gave way to something stranger. As humanity pushed into the epoch of exploration, scientists began to suspect that maple syrup might hold potential far beyond the Earth's surface. Experimental research from the Canadian Syrup and Space Agency suggested syrup could outperform conventional aerospace propellants under extreme cold due to its viscosity, an advantage that caught the attention of private industry. Rumors persist that Elon Musk intends to use syrup-based fuel for the first Mars colony. Musk denies this, even as leaked footage shows SpaceX engineers testing pancakes in zero gravity. Not wanting to be left behind, Canada launched the first orbital Maple Grove platform, Maple Belt Alpha, a facility designed to examine whether syrup could be harvested or even synthesized under zero-gravity conditions. Analysts now warn that the nation controlling Maple Belt Alpha may possess serious risks to the global economy. But in the end, it was never about breakfast. It was about power. Today, we remember Eleanor Maple and Dan Syrup, not merely as the discoverers of maple syrup, but as the accidental architects of modern Canada, the unlikely founders of a new geopolitical century, shaped not by steel, or gunpowder, or even diplomacy, but by viscosity. For more than 200 years, nations have risen, fallen, fought, negotiated, and rewritten international law in pursuit of a resource that emerged from a single moment of frustration on a cold frontier morning. Empires may rise through conquest and ambition, but they endure only through control. Control of supply, control of scarcity, control of what the world cannot live without. And in the end, global power remains in the hands of those who control the maple syrup supply. A reminder that history rarely flows cleanly and often sticks to everything it touches. Thank you for coming with me on this journey, and I hope you now understand what's truly happening.